The movie begins in the year 1950, when James Wright makes his way to the Edo dojo. Upon entering, he immediately notices the students, who are immersed in their training, practicing with discipline and intensity. James demands to see the master of the school, pointing toward a photograph that is displayed with great prominence on the wall, and he asks about the identity of the man shown in it. The master explains that his own father often spoke of this individual, telling stories about his unshakable will to fight and the controversial style of combat he had developed. He warns James that coming here has brought dishonor and unwanted danger upon his family. In order to put James in his place, the master orders his students to attack him. James, however, demonstrates his incredible ability, using unmatched speed and power to defeat every single one of them in only a few moments. The master, now intrigued by what he has witnessed, asks James to explain why he has come to this place. The story then shifts back to the year 1942, set against the backdrop of World War II during the Battle of Bataan. At this time, James Wright is a decorated British wing commander serving alongside the Allied forces. The battle is collapsing as the relentless advance of the Japanese army overwhelms the Allied defenses. In the midst of this chaos, James takes part in an aerial engagement but is shot down. His aircraft crashes far into enemy territory, and though he miraculously survives the impact, he is badly wounded and exhausted. Surrounded by Japanese soldiers, James summons every bit of strength he has left to fight them off. Despite his desperate resistance, he is eventually subdued, captured, and taken to a Japanese prison camp where conditions are extremely harsh and inhumane. At this prison camp, James encounters Lieutenant Colonel Ito, a commander who looks down on him and does not recognize his true ability. Ito orders Corporal Hayano and a group of loyal soldiers to lead James into the forest and execute him. But James refuses to accept death so easily. In a desperate act of survival, he fights back fiercely, killing his would-be executioners. After managing to dispatch them, he flees into the jungle, frantically seeking a way out. In the dense wilderness, he stumbles upon a Japanese aircraft, and for a brief moment, it seems as if he might find a chance to escape. But before he can act, he triggers a concealed jungle trap and is captured again. Dragged once more before Ito, James has his personal belongings confiscated, and Ito warns him coldly that he will be executed by the next day. Within the camp, James becomes acquainted with fellow captives from many different nations, including battle-hardened American Marines, Filipino resistance fighters, and other Allied servicemen who share his grim fate. The next day, James is forced into a deadly confrontation, ordered to fight a towering, half-starved prisoner in a brutal match. Though he wins, the victory feels empty, leaving him weighed down by the cost of survival. Ito's second-in-command argues that James should be executed at once, but Ito refuses, insisting that James' end will come in time. Later, James is summoned by Ito's men and taken to the colonel's office. Ito questions him directly, asking where he learned such forbidden and dangerous techniques. James, however, refuses to reveal anything about his teacher, holding his silence. Angered by this, Ito vows once again that James will die. The following morning, James is dragged back into the arena. He is forced into yet another brutal fight, this time against other prisoners. Even though the circumstances are cruel, James continues to survive, defeating his opponents one after another. In the darkness of camp life, James begins to form a daring plan, to steal a radio from the Japanese guards and send a call for help. During a day of forced labor, he and his fellow prisoners create a diversion that draws the guards away. James seizes the chance and manages to steal a radio. The very next day, however, Ito gathers the prisoners and warns them that escape attempts will be punished severely. To prove his point, he punishes those suspected of planning to flee. Even so, James remains determined. That night, he slips into the jungle to scout for a location where they might send a signal. To outsmart the guards, he leaves his shoes in his bed, making it appear as though he is still there during roll call. When he returns, he stresses to the prisoners that they need someone who can communicate in code to reach out effectively to the Americans. Soon, James is summoned once again by Ito. This time, the colonel presses him about whether he understands Navajo or Indian languages, which he claims may have been heard in the region. James pretends to know nothing, which infuriates Ito. In his anger, Ito binds James to poles and orders his men to beat him savagely. After the brutal beating, James is released only to be forced into another deadly fight. Bloodied and battered, he somehow manages to triumph again. But in a cruel display, Ito executes several prisoners in retaliation and has James knocked unconscious. When James regains consciousness, he finds himself bandaged and treated by Teresa, a woman captured and forced to serve as a nurse for the Japanese soldiers. She explains that James is the first prisoner ever to be given medical attention, a sign of his unusual importance. Once he is recovered, James returns to the other prisoners with renewed determination. He rallies them, urging them to remain strong, especially now that hope has returned. He learns that while he was unconscious, a document signed by General Douglas MacArthur had warned the Japanese that an Allied attack was imminent. This news rekindles the spirit of the prisoners. That very night, they attempt to use their stolen radio to send a message. But tight security causes their plan to fail. During the attempt, they are spotted, and in desperation, they kill a guard. Then, a young Japanese soldier approaches. Showing mercy, James orders his men not to kill him, and they retreat back to their beds. The next morning, when the guards check, they find all prisoners seemingly in place. Later that day, Ito calls everyone to a meeting. He accuses James' group of killing his men and demands to know who is responsible. James steps forward, boldly taking the blame and claiming he acted alone. To test him, Ito orders him to kill another prisoner using the forbidden technique. James refuses. Enraged, Ito executes the man himself. Later, during another prisoner fight, James' ally is victorious. James again challenges Ito directly to a duel, but Ito denies him, instead assigning him to hard labor. While working, James tells his men they must try again. That night, they set their plan in motion. With the help of a prisoner skilled in radio coding, they successfully send out their location to the Americans. The group feels uplifted, their spirits lifted by the possibility of rescue. However, when they return, they find the camp empty. Suddenly, they are ambushed, arrested, and knocked unconscious. When they awaken, chaos surrounds them, the camp is under attack. Amid the bedlam, Teresa and her friend Anna rush to free the prisoners. They search for the stolen radio, only to find it destroyed. Determined not to give up, James devises another plan, to capture a replacement radio. Teresa and Anna bravely kill a guard, while the prisoners, fueled by rage and vengeance, rise up against their captors. A fierce battle erupts. In the middle of the chaos, James confronts Ito in his office once again. He challenges him directly, and the two clash in a violent fight. James gains the upper hand, but before he can finish Ito, one of his allies pulls him away. Ito's second-in-command opens fire, but Ito himself intervenes and halts the attack, giving James and his men the chance to escape. They reach their destination and send a signal to the American forces, who arrive swiftly, defeating the Japanese and rescuing the surviving prisoners. The narrative then returns to 1950 at the Ito dojo. The master dismisses his students, steps forward, and personally faces James. They engage in a fierce fight, and James ultimately defeats him. Instead of boasting, however, James requests that the master demonstrate the forbidden technique, the very move his father had told him about. Thank you for watching.